Yeah, and the founder of LinkedIn is one of the biggest sources of money behind this movement from the private sector.
Of
So you've got the
course.
social media that influences everybody, the professional networking system like LinkedIn that influences so many people, and then Meta, Facebook was doing a lot of this, and the old Twitter was doing this, and then censoring people who had different points of view,
Hmm.
debanking in the case of Wells Fargo and Bank of America and other places. So people are finding they have no recourse. What's our future going to be in a system like this? And now you've got the FBI and the CIA and the who knows what other elements of government. What's going to happen to us as a society? So Trump has pushed back really hard with a lot of shock and awe, and
Yeah.
there's no evidence that he's going to stop. And it's well planned. His inner circle has been planning this since last spring. They've had some first-rate lawyers, first-rate former officials writing the executive orders well in advance, and
Hmm.
so he was ready to go, just like Obama had been on day one, and Biden's team had been on day one. He was ready to go this time, and he's doing what he's doing, and he's dismantling everything and exposing it. In the case with USAID, I think you'll see it happen through every government agency, all the waste and fraud and corruption and really cartel-like activity, favoritism involved with a waste of our tax dollars.
Yeah. But do you think that's going to get rid of it? I mean, if this is ultimately a Marxist ideology that is just bringing forward um, these types of, critical race theory and DEI with the end goal of turning us into a Marxist society, I don't know how just cracking down on DEI and critical race theory is going to really change that goal. But I'm not certain that's. I have a hard time. I mean, look, there's always people are going to watch this, going to say, Kim, you don't get it. There's an actual cabal of people trying to do this to us. It's not just innocent weed that spread and everybody just kind of got roped into it. No, this is a concerted effort to like dismantle society. I'm sure, I have a hard time. Maybe I'm naive. I have a hard time believing that that's really what's going on. I just think it's more likely that people just got caught up in certain ways of thinking because they wanted to fit in
Yeah,
and it became trendy.
that's groupthink. That's mob mentality, and
Right.
it's just
Right.
everybody needs validation, and a lot of people thrive on provoking other people, and they thrive on conflict. You've raised a lot of points here. I think most people simply don't care about any Marxist roots of DEI or anything else. They couldn't care
Right.
less, and they won't even believe it. I just happen to have spent a couple of years tracking it down, going to the original sources and learning it just to learn what the intellectual basis of this was, because it was the FBI's job to be defending the country against foreign propaganda, and it worked
Right.
till it collapsed. That was my interest. But it's like right where you are now in LA. How many of the fires were naturally occurring fires because of the aridity and the fire prone nature, and how many were set? Well, there's a
I mean, all of
combination.
them might have been set,
Right.
right? I mean, they all might
Right.
have been, for
So
all we
we don't
know.
know, but there were actual
Yeah.
people out there who, what were they doing it just because they're malicious people, or was it a criminal conspiracy?
Right. Right.
Was it
Yeah.
being, we don't know. So
Right. We
someday
don't know.
we might find out, but it's certainly um, it's not naturally occurring fires, at least not all of it. So there is an element there of pre-existing conditions, say, poor water management and poor management of the arid areas, you know,
Hmm.
that would result in something naturally occurring at some point, which is cyclical in nature. It's natural.
Right.
So
Right.
imagine you're a revolutionary and you think, I'm going to take advantage of this situation for my own purposes and exploit it to cause chaos and disrupt the order. So if you apply that fire metaphor to DEI in our society, it's very similar. How much of it was on purpose and how much of it was just natural and how much of it was just people wanting to fit in?
Yeah. Either way, though, I mean, I think the point is that if we don't get it under control, it inevitably does lead to Marxism. I think that's a
Yeah,
natural thought process that happens because if you're going to just say everybody's equal, and there are, and to the point where there's no men or women that were, that you could just flip flop
yeah,
that and switch that
yeah.
as you want. I mean, if you're going to think like that and get to that point, then there would be eventually the economic consequence. And, a lot of people might point to our government society today. I mean, I don't know what it was. I wasn't alive, believe it or not, 100 years ago. So I don't know exactly what our economic situation in the country looked like compared to, although I feel like we're approaching, I mean, the level that we're taxed, just
Yeah,
looking at the tax rates alone.
yeah,
I mean, we are forced to share our money. I mean, they're forcing us to give money and share it essentially. Who we share it with, I don't know, but we're, you know,
yeah. And we're
but they're
forced
certainly
is the right
taking.
word. We're compelled under penalty of law
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
have
yeah,
people in the government take our money. It's enacted by Congress, but then bureaucrats decide, do we audit you and how are we going to mess around with you and take your earnings? Now, it's just recently come out with Doge has found out that 10% of federal spending is outright fraud and theft. Okay, about
I bet
another
it's more than that.
right,
I
but
can't
that's what they're
imagine it's,
finding out. So,
I'm sure it's
but
more
that's
like
outright.
90%.
Well, but I mean, let's say it's I get what you're saying, but say it could because a lot of the congressional appropriations are for fraudulent purposes. But this is
Yeah,
outright theft of what's been appropriated, and then another 25% is uh, just fraud and abuse. So you've got theft on the one
yeah,
side, fraud and abuse and waste on the other side, and then you have what 18% of the federal budget is to fund deficit spending. So we're paying banks, we're subsidizing the big banks for the deficit spending because Congress doesn't want to cut spending because it wants the goodies to give away and it doesn't want to raise taxes.
right.
So they're passing this burden on. So half of what we're paying in taxes is for pure waste that adds nothing to our society. So that's
Yeah.
just being taken from
There
us. So if we average taxpayer works 105 days a year just to pay taxes. So if half of that is waste, he's wasting 50 days a year for nothing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. And I've noticed with the young generation, and this is kind of my what I was saying with it leading, this type of thinking kind of ultimately leads to the Marxist, way of thinking, right? This kind of communist thinking. I already see it in the young people. You know how hard it is to find young people to work? When I hire young people, how many times have I heard people in their 20s say things like, I don't want to work that many hours and
Yeah,
you need to double my salary. Like
yeah,
I need to work less, get paid more,
yeah,
very entitled thinking,
yeah.
no, I'm not going to work like that. I want to making all these demands. I mean, it's a very they don't want to work. They've already reached a point in their mentality where they don't believe that they should have to work, that
Yeah.
they just believe in wealth redistribution. I mean, they really are thinking this.
Mhm. Yeah, they're leeches. And then you go into a coffee shop and they have the screen. How much do you want to tip for this idiot to hand you a cup of
I
coffee? And,
know, right?
and it's no longer the 15% tradition. It's a 18, 20,
Oh,
25%.
no, it's higher than that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
25, 30% they're asking for. And
It's
it's like, not
it's
only did the cup of coffee go up in price, but now you're wanting 30% of the cup of coffee that you
yeah,
didn't even pour for me. You handed me a cup and I poured it myself.
yeah. And like places like Starbucks, they like to have fine coffee, but to save money, they over roast their beans. So that's why you have that bad taste in your mouth after a cup of
Terrible.
Starbucks. So they really just cheap. So yeah, so and you have that sense of entitlement. So where do you go for this? You go to where you
Yeah.
don't want people from the prestige universities. You don't want the people who are brought up privileged and spoiled. You want those people from Iowa State University. You might want those foreigners who haven't been corrupted with this sense of entitlement.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, even the kids coming out of the state universities are still, it's already infiltrated to that level. It's already infiltrated.
Yeah. So now do you want them
I mean,
completely populating the FBI and the CIA? Because that's where we were headed until 2 weeks ago.
yeah. So the way to combat this is obviously recognizing it's happening, right? Like awareness is the number one thing, and understanding to where all of the places this has, it's not just in our annoying, life on LinkedIn or social media. It's not just in Hollywood, but this is infiltrated. You're saying even the FBI and the CIA, it goes all the way.
Yeah. And so imagine that you've got people who are their job is to collect evidence and weigh evidence in the case of law enforcement that will stand up in court. that was collected legally to prove a case against someone else and maybe throw that other person in prison. And but they're so biased in the way they view the world. They think they're social justice warriors who, I'm going to cut whatever corner I can to throw this guy in jail just because I don't like how he's thinking.
Yeah.
And you have CIA intelligence officers who say, well, they think, well, we're the oppressors, therefore these people, the communist Chinese or Hezbollah or whatever, they really don't mean what they say. It's us that's the problem, and they're consciously or unconsciously biasing their intelligence assessments so severely that they end up misinforming or disinforming, depending on their intent, the leadership of the country. You don't want these
Mm.
people running at all in our intelligence community or our law enforcement or as judges or as prosecutors. This is how the systems of government get weaponized against the population.
Yeah. But it sounds like they've been there the whole time. I mean, it sounds like the CIA, they've been there the whole time. Like it's the whole, I think maybe the whole thing's rotten. It's time to cut, time to cut it loose entirely.
Anything needs to get culled back and renovated or chopped down. Or, every healthy forest needs a good forest fire. Every neighborhood needs renewal. Everything, every car needs to be
Careful,
rebuilt.
careful. Come on, I'm in LA. I don't want to hear
I
about
mean, not that renewed, but
fire. Yeah.
no, but so you've got an obsolete road system. Well, tear it up and put in a new one. It's going to this
Yeah.
inconvenience people. If this old bridge is being decayed and it's not wide enough to support the traffic, build another bridge and take the old one down and make it safer and more efficient. That's what advancement of society is about. If our school systems aren't working, well, then something similar. If our intelligence services are as decrepit as our highway system, let's do something to address that,
Yeah.
especially if it's getting
Yeah.
people hurt or abused or even killed.
Yeah. Well, when's the CIA ever been right? I mean, really, this is an organization has a pretty piss poor track record, quite frankly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fair to say. I mean, they've had some really great victories, but from the beginning, they didn't detect the Soviet development of the hydrogen bomb. They didn't detect so much of what was happening during the Cold War. They couldn't anticipate even the collapse of the taking down of the Berlin Wall or the collapse of the Soviet Union. When we were outside, we knew this was happening because we were there reporting it. I was in the
Yeah.
Kremlin the day the Soviet Union collapsed. People didn't want
Wow.
to believe what I was saying, that it can't be true. And sure, of course it was true, but it doesn't you don't have to be a spy to see this. You could just be a normal person who's there. But
Yeah.
if our intelligence services can't pick up what citizens can pick up, they couldn't detect that at 9/11 would happen. Maybe they can't be everywhere. You don't want them everywhere because then they'll be omnipotent, but they couldn't see these trends that would lead to this type of thing, and they never prepared our leadership to equip ourselves intellectually and physically to address these things, and they're always solving these tragedies after they occurred. So we're stuck with the post 9/11 giant intelligence spy apparatus that was,
Yeah.
is probably unconstitutional, and that is a threat to our constitution, but it's keeping us safe from terrorists, supposedly.
Yeah, that's
And
what they claim.
that's what they claim, but maybe
As they
they
hunt down American Catholics and J6 protesters and parents at school boards that didn't want their kids wearing masks, right? That's who they're
absolutely,
hunting down.
absolutely. So they view half the American public as the enemy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind culling the CIA entirely, but then, if we do, it won't matter. They'll just absorb into all the other intelligence agencies that we have because we have so many now. How many do we have? Like 18.
18.
So, yeah,
Yeah, but it's good to have a larger number that have different roles because you don't have a single omnipotent one that can control everything. That was the idea of having a larger group of intelligence agencies with their own discipline, because then they could never be a threat to our constitutional republic. The problem came really when President George H.W. Bush, after 9/11, and Congress set up the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to coordinate these different intelligence agencies. It was only supposed to have 100 people in it. Now it has over 2,000 plus 2,000 and
Mm,
more contractors. So that's a half of a U.S. Army division
yeah.
right there for that one office that was only supposed to have 2 school bus loads of people to coordinate things. Tulsi Gabbard uh, is going to run that now, and she has said she's going to
Mm,
bring it back to its original intent. So what is she doing? Why is she such a threat in this case? She's taking a universe of, say, roughly 2,000 careerists and 2,000 plus contractors who are making more than they would if they were in government, and she's going to get rid of them. She's going
mhm.
to unemploy them. She presents a huge threat just for that. And if you look at the Washington, D.C. area, some of the wealthiest zip codes in the country are in the Washington, D.C. area, and there's no indigenous business here. There's no banking, there's no mining, there's no manufacturing to speak of, unless it's there to serve the purposes of the people who work in the government. So you've got,
Mhm.
all these mansions built by these contractors on U.S. government contracts, like AID or military or HHS, you name it.
Yeah.
Trump is threatening all that. But so he's destroying their whole business model because it's based on fleecing the American taxpayer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. And I hope Tulsi gets in there and does the job. That's certainly what I'm hoping for. J. Michael Waller, interesting conversation. I'm you're the first person I have to say who was actually able to link Marxism rather than just using it as a slur. Because so many people they just throw it out there like, oh, it's the Marxists, it's the
Yeah.
Marxists. And it's like, okay, you're using that now instead of leftists or liberals, like it's become just kind of like a derogatory slur, but you're actually saying, no, 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 we can actually trace it. And this is the origin and this is how it got here. And it makes a lot of sense now. I mean, now I think you were really clear. So thank you for that. The book is Big Intel: How the CIA and FBI Went from Cold War Heroes to Deep State Villains. We do have the link to that book down below. You can purchase that. Michael, do you have anywhere else that you want people to find you anywhere? I mean, we've got the link to the book. Do you have like an X profile or a Substack or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on X at J. Michael Waller. I have
Okay.
a Substack called Big Intel, but don't pay to subscribe to it because I only put things up on a whenever kind of basis. But I'm also on
Okay.
Substack.
Okay.
And then our organization is centerforsecuritypolicy.org.
All right. Well, we have all of those links down below. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
It's nice to be with you, Kim.
Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show. If you want to watch the full show, just visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.